You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Got a lot of homeowner issues lately, so that's cool. We do have the fitness ones, but we don't have our guests. We know who we're using, but we haven't booked it yet that way. Okay, here we go. Long-time listener. Oh, this guy's a big guy, 6'4", 240. People keep bringing in the stats. That's fine. That's cool. Anyway, he and his girlfriend bought a house together this summer in Orange County. It's everything we want, a great neighborhood, flip renovated before we moved in, a corner lot, one neighbor on one side and one directly behind with a shared wall. When we moved in, the neighbor behind us had a large patio umbrella that split our back wall and was half in their yard and half in ours. Not a huge deal overall, but it was a bit of an eyesore. Our house has been renovated for about 6 months before we moved in, so we just assumed the neighbors would notice someone had moved in and moved the umbrella fully to their side. This did not happen. All right, here we go. To make matters worse, over the first few weeks, every Friday and Saturday night, our neighbors would have loud pool parties and play techno music until about 12 or 1 in the morning. I love to drink and have a good time as much as the next guy, but it was getting excessive multiple times over these first few weeks. I walked over to the neighbor's house and knocked on the door in hopes of finally meeting face to face, getting to know each other, and hopefully coming to some sort of amicable agreement on music, loud noise, etc. Unfortunately, no one ever answered the door. Who's living here? Jesse Pinkman? This is nuts. No one answered the door. All right, so we could not figure out exactly who lived in the house. 4 weeks in, after ragers on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, the neighbors got it going again on Sunday night. Since this was the 4th night in a row, my patience was gone as my girlfriend and I were laying in bed at 12:30 a.m. We heard a loud bang against the sliding glass door in our living room. I jumped out of bed, went outside, and found a smashed vape pen on the ground that someone had chucked over the wall from the neighbor's party. I was seething mad. My girlfriend begged. So in the middle of the night, you found a vape pen? You have the eyes of an eagle, man. All right, so seething mad, my girlfriend begged me not to go over to the house that late, so I chucked the broken vape pen back over the wall and called the cops. Pretty understandable at this point. I think almost everyone so far is leaning your way in this. Okay. Called the cops. Police say they go check it out. It's also in August in the middle of the pandemic. Hey, the Orange County has decided the pandemic. Florida, Scottsdale, and the OC apparently have all said, we're good on your pandemic. They're treating it like a science that they don't believe in. All right. Things are quiet during the week, so we thought maybe the cops had an impact. But on the next Friday night, party started back up again. And Saturday morning, I woke up and went to our backyard and found multiple beer bottle caps and cigarette butts had been tossed over the wall. Ooh. I immediately walked to the neighbor's house and started knocking. Finally, someone answered the door, introduced myself as the neighbor, sharing the wall. The guy said he lived there with his dad and that he was 23 years old. I said, that's great. Nice to meet you. Small talk, blah, blah, blah. Finally, as I was getting ready to leave after a 5-minute conversation, I said, hey, 2 other things. One, would you mind moving your umbrella completely over to your side of the wall? We'd really appreciate it not hanging over on our side. And 2, I'm all for partying and having a good time, but could you please lower the music around 12? And please don't have anyone throwing trash in my yard. He said, oh, yeah, of course, no problem. I thought to myself, great convo. Common ground, we should be good. All right. Now, since he said he lived with his dad and the parties have been going on, we assumed the dad was out of town. And a couple days later, lo and behold, the umbrella was moved off our side. However, a couple days after that, we heard the dad again in the backyard. And the next day, the umbrella was back where it was before and was half in our yard. All right, so they don't care about you and the umbrella at all. They clearly don't care about you at all. So we're just going to get that one out of the way if you hadn't already figured that one out. To make matters worse, my girlfriend and I went on a walk later that evening. As we passed by their fence, we heard the kid talking shit about us to their neighbors. They called the cops. They're lame. They asked us to move the umbrella. Guy's an asshole. After all this, I was just over it and didn't want any more issues, so we let the umbrella be. A month later, I'm building a pergola in our backyard and was up on the ladder. The neighbor, the dad who I hadn't met, was on his roof spraying something down. Unsolicited, he calls out to me and says, hey, I just want to let you know I ordered a new umbrella. I have a TV mounted on the wall, so I need the umbrella for shade. I bought one of those half umbrellas and it should arrive in a few weeks. I said, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the heads up and the understanding. Fast forward to now. It's been 3 months since that conversation, and the same dumb umbrella is still there and half in our yard. Do I drop it forever and let these neighbors punk me with their umbrella? Do I try to talk to them again about it reasonably, or do I go full deconstructo mode and take a sawzall to the half of the umbrella in my yard? Okay, he sent a picture. I'm going to tell you right now, if I were a judge, this picture's not doing our emailer any favors, because it actually, from the angle, it doesn't look like it's all the way over, or it's half over on you, or, the wall seems really high. And so you're seeing their umbrella and you're kind of like, whatever. All right. So I'm not ruling against our guy that emailed in here. I'm just saying this picture for this umbrella, it seems like a huge amount of shit that you're dealing with here about this umbrella angle. I'm also used to seeing everything else because where I live, everything's on top of each other anyway. So we just, you don't even think about it that way. But I get it. This is a house. It's a lot. Slightly different, although I'm sure it's probably a packed neighborhood in the OC. The bigger issue is that he just doesn't care at all. He doesn't care about anything. And then oddly enough, the dad doesn't seem to care about anything. You have to be, I would say early 20s, you kind of don't understand. You just are like, what are you talking about? I'm in my 20s. People want to come over. And because it's a pandemic, he's having more house parties. And there's no process. Look, I was that neighbor when I was really young. I just didn't even think. I'd be like, why would you not want to listen to Ludacris at 20, at 2, 3 in the morning? That's a me problem. And you're just an asshole, and you kind of know, oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't do that. But you don't care. You just don't care because you're young and you're stupid and you're arrogant and you're kind of like, man, why is this guy giving me such a hard time? So I really think the only thing you can do here, the umbrella thing, you're obviously just going to lose on. I think you are. I would give up on the umbrella deal. But the party thing was so much more disrespectful. And the fact that clearly, oh, this asshole neighbor, and they decided, I would never do that. I would never go, oh, this neighbor complained, so now let's throw garbage over the wall into his place, because that means, so this guy has no respect for you at all. And it doesn't seem like the dad does either. This actually sounds like a classic OC family. Shout out to Orange County. I think you're going to just fight fire with fire on this and just go right back at him, where you throw an all-timer with COVID restrictions passing. So you might have to wait a while here. We don't want to endorse anything. And you go hard at 3 fucking a.m. All right? That's when it starts. And you maybe get a bullhorn and say, hey, you guys think you go hard? We're going to go Mykonos hard on this side of the wall. And just go for it. And it'll be hilarious because you probably wouldn't ever do it anyway. Have it be so late, so obnoxious, music that you can't even pick up with Siri, where they're like, don't know. I think it's Turkish. And just rage without giving any fucks about these neighbors and hope they come over and go, yep. That's what it's like. I love my dad. He's got a really odd, funny streak in him at times. And he drove me back up to school during a snowstorm once. So I had to be, my freshman year. And we were stuck in this dumpy motel. He was not the kind of guy that was going to splurge on a hotel room ever, by the way. And there was a couple next to us that was just raging all night, smoking cigarettes. It stunk so bad. They're making all sorts of noise. We'd driven all the way up from Martha's Vineyard to get to Burlington in a snowstorm, which is, if you ever done that drive through the Northeast, it takes forever and it's kind of hairy. I mean, normally it could be 5 hours, but with snow, you never know. I mean, it's taken me 11 hours, I think, in the past, if I hit it wrong. And so we were miserable. I had to move into the dorm because I couldn't get in, when we drove back up. And we were both tired. It's cold. And the motel sucked. It was our call. What was it call? And my father was so pissed about the bad night of sleep that he turned the TV up as loud as he possibly could to a Canadian station that was playing cartoons in French. So if you think there's an annoying sound of music or an annoying TV show or just a loud conversation, hungover 7 a.m. French cartoons, like French Tom and Jerry, has to be one of the worst things to wake up to. So he turned the TV on the TV cart, turned it all the way up, and it was like, all right, Ryan, let's get out of here. I can't imagine what it was like to wake up to that hungover and then try to figure it out. And we're already checked out and, they're banging on the door. I don't know. So I just feel for you on this one because the kid isn't going to get it. He isn't going to get it. He thinks you're the bad guy.
That made me feel so gross. From sophomore year until I guess to like
last week.
No. But like until probably till I turned 21, and it wasn't weird that I was like drinking. Like I don't know how many years that is. That's a lot of years. There was at my dad's house, there was like his fence. We shared like another. There was like a no man's land situation between two fences between our yards. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I don't know, maybe like 3 feet across of like, there's trees and there's fences, and then there's really nothing in between. There's no reason for anyone to ever go in that area between the two properties' fences. And it was cigarettes and beers because I didn't want my parents to find, like thinking they would go in the garbage or something. So for, maybe 8 years of just me and my friends, cigarettes and beer cans and bottles. And then one day my dad was getting the trees cleared out, and I went with him because I was like, I got to see what this looks like. I just didn't think anyone would ever have to see it. And the neighbor walked up, and he was like, oh, there's some stuff back here. He's like, yeah, I've been cleaning it out for years. And I just fucking kind of like folded into myself that this guy has been like, and the guy was like 65 at the time. So he was already probably near retirement when I started the little stash back there. And I just thought, oh my God, this man's been cleaning up my stupid friends' beers and cigarette butts for 8 years. I don't know. So I just thought it was like an abyss, but no, that guy checked and would just go back there with garbage bags apparently. So that story made me feel really gross because I had a flashback to that.
Yeah, I mean it's part of growing up.
I never thought about it,
but like I remember. I mean, I'm not going to do another life advice, so this will just turn into a little bit of a story time thing. But God, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but we got our hands on a ton of fake snow, like that you do in your windows, so it looks like the windows are frosted around Christmas time.
Yeah.
I don't know. We had to have had it from a house party or something stupid. And so we just had a ton. And then we used to constantly do like graffiti on each other's cars. And one guy wrote on like the back of a kid's, I don't know, it was like an RX-7. Does that make sense, Kyle? Can we get research on what an RX-7 is?
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way. It wasn't a sweet car. Okay. Now it wasn't even this one. This is like a 95. If I go like a 9, it was a Mazda something, and it wasn't awesome. Because the funny thing is, like, I wasn't a guy that had money when I was in college, and we would have roommates. You couldn't fathom. Like a roommate would go pick out a fucking Land Rover Discovery because it snowed. Be like, oh, my parents, be like, dude, you have a Tahoe. Like, oh, my parents are just not uncomfortable, with the conditions up here, so they wanted me to upgrade it. And then, next thing you know, kids driving back with a fully paid for Land Rover Discovery, and these would be our friends, right? It just was, UVM was crazy that way. And then, me and this another kid who was from Mass. And by the way, even when my father started doing better, the last thing he was ever going to do was buy me a car at 20, 21. Never. It was never going to happen. And I just remember all of a sudden, like, spring break or closer to graduation, everybody was rocking these brand new cars. And it was always kind of a reminder too. You're like, oh, this is how rich some of our friends are. This is fucking crazy. And, me and one of the other kids he was from Woburn, Mass. I mean, he wasn't from a family that had money. I mean, shit, he thought I was rich because I was from Martha's Vineyard. And again, my father started doing like better as I got older. And so at that point it had like zero impact on me at all. So they wrote a huge Ida, you fill in the blank, on the back of his Mazda shitbox. And we left it there for like 2 days in a neighborhood with people that were walking dogs and kids that were getting onto bus stops. And I thought it was the funniest thing. And one of the other guys who lived in the house, and we're all the same age, and he goes, hey guys, like, just going to give you a heads up. Like, we shouldn't be doing stuff like that. We shouldn't be doing something like, yeah, we're all making fun of it. We're spraying fake snow stuff on each other's cars. And, we shouldn't. And seriously, half of us in the room are looking at him like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, where, and he was right. He was totally right. But sometimes you're just so wrapped up, especially when you're younger, because you just have less, you have more storage and less has gone on. So you're wrapped up in your present day, probably more more often than you are as you get a little bit older. And I'm embarrassed. Look, I'm embarrassed to share the story, but I also don't think it's that crazy of a thing. Like in that moment, I'm going, wait, what? And now I look back and I'm horrified going, some parent was walking their daughter to a bus stop and, they'd be like, what's that? And you're just like, oh, like, oh, it's these terrible 6 guys that, and that was the weird thing about Burlington, Vermont, is that you'd have these old neighborhood stretches, but then they would get overrun. Like if there was a old timey house that had 3 floors, maybe it's got 3 units. So college kids are going to be the people renting it out. And we rented out this massive house. There was like 6 of us in 6 bedrooms, and nobody else was really going to rent that house out other than college kids. So, Burlington would also do this thing where they pass all these town laws during the summer when no one was around, and they were all just set up to hammer every college kid. And all that stuff started actually really changing while I was there too. So like we came back our senior year and then we're like, wait, 24-hour noise violations? Like when did this get passed? So like it's August. Like, oh, okay. So anyway, not all that insightful, but if you're maybe really a lot younger that's listening to this podcast, just like Kyle said, like you kind of turning into yourself where you go, oh,
the world is bigger than your driveway or that space between the fences. Like,
yeah. And unfortunately for our guy that emails in here, this kid doesn't care. And if his dad doesn't care, then this kid is ranked. He's like a 2 seed in the East region of not caring of people.
His dad's backing him up. Yeah. You got no shot.
Right. Yeah. If the dad is backing him up and he's throwing garbage, because the problem is if you escalate it, I don't know. I'm with you. I mean, I'd have a hard time just going, oh, I don't want to keep this going. But you're just going to have to, maybe the next party they have you film all the garbage. You send the video to the dad and you go, like, even you as an adult, you would have to admit this is super fucked up and it has to stop. And if that guy's like, yeah, whatever, my kid's awesome. I don't know. Maybe join a biker gang. Let's not do that right away. Just thinking out loud. Just stuff, spitballing here. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. We'll be back and previewing the Super Bowl.